one more life.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video of Command Me Minecraft, the show in which I teach you how to code with command blocks in separate lessons. This is lesson number 2, Gamerules. Alright, so starting right off with the first newest game rule actually, which was added in 1.11, and that is do weather cycle. And weather, that basically defines whether this weather cycle is frozen. So here we have the command right there. So you can input either true or false here. So at default it's false, or true, sorry. And if I, for instance, type in false right there, it will never rain, and it will be the same weather as it usually is always. So that's pretty nifty. Alright, so moving right along to, I think, the most important game rule if you want to command with command blocks. And that is whether command blocks output anything in the chat. So usually, if I, for instance, give myself some diamonds, it will say spam the chat basically with a bunch of give diamond things. And if I, for instance, change this is the command by the way, to false, it is true at default, then it will not spam the chat. It will be completely empty. Alright, so moving on to the third game rule, and this is disable elytra movement check, which looks like this. And that basically toggles if you stop in midair. So sometimes if you fly with an elytra, then you can actually, then you stop sometimes in the air. So this is basically the command that I showed you, and it default it's false. And if you take it to true, then that will disable the movement check, and it will be a bit unstable, but you will not stop in the air. Alright, so moving on to, I think, the fourth game rule now, and this is do daylight cycle, and that toggles whether the day-night cycle is frozen. So at default it's false, but if I change it to true, or actually it's the opposite, it's true at default, and if I change it to false, then the sun will be completely still. So here you can see that I have turned it off, so I put it to false, and the sun is completely still. Alright, so moving on to the fifth game rule, and this is do entity drops, and that is toggles whether entities drop anything. This does not apply to mobs. It does only applies to like entities, like for instance falling sand, which doesn't work. But if I, for instance, place sand here, you can see that it drops an item when it hits the torch. And if I set this to false, you can see the command here by the way, then you will not get an item when you drop this. Alright, so moving on to the sixth game rule, and this is do fire tick, and that toggles whether fire spreads. So at default it's true, so if I place some wood down here, I can light it on fire, and you will see in a moment here that it will spread from this block. Actually, you know, I have actually changed this already, but so I've changed it to false, and that means that it will not spread. But if I change it to true, which is the default if you make a new world, it will spread. So you can see that that got burned, and if we're lucky here, it will probably spread to another plank. But yes, so that's what that does. Okay, so moving on to the seventh game rule, here we have do mob loot, and that defines whether mobs drop any loot. So if I spawn a creeper right here, and I kill it, you can see that it should drop. It's a bit random, but it should drop if I kill it a bunch of times. Here you go. And that's because do entity or mob drop actually, mob loot, sorry, is set to true. But if I turn this to false, it will never ever drop any loot. So I can kill it a bunch of times here, but it will not drop anything. Alright, so moving on to the eighth game rule, we have do mob spawning, and that defines whether mobs spawn naturally. So right now in this world I have it set to false, but in default it's actually true. So if I am, for instance, set it to night right now, you can see that no mobs are spawning right now. But if I set it to true like it usually is, you can see that mobs start to spawn. And yeah, so that defines that. Alright, so moving on to the 9th game rule, we have do tile drops, and that defines whether blocks broken drop in items. So in this world right now, I got it set to the default, and that is true. But if I set this to, actually, let me just show you what happens then. It just gives you an item as usual. But if I set this to false, then you will see I will not get an item from that. Alright, so moving on to the 10th game rule, we have keep inventory. And this defines whether you keep your inventory after dying. So if I, for instance, give myself a stone block, by the way, in this world right now, I have it set to false, and that is the usual, that's the default as well. So if I kill myself right now, here, then you will see that I dropped my stone there. So if I go back and actually pick up my stone, and set this to true, then I can kill myself again, and I will keep my stone, even though I died. Alright, so moving on to the 11th game rule, we have log admin commands, and this defines whether admin's commands get logged. So basically, if I am an admin on this world, obviously because I have sheets allowed, so if I type like something random, give myself a diamond or something, then that will not be logged in the game log, so it keeps out the clutter. Alright, so the 12th game rule, we have mob griefing, and that defines whether mobs are allowed to destroy blocks. So here you can see the command, and we have, so basically if I set it to true, which it's at default, then if I, for instance, spawn, well, let's see, we can spawn a creeper over here, and we can grab a flint and steel. So if I spawn a creeper over here and light it, then you will see it destroys blocks. But if I change this instead to false, then I can do the same, but it will not destroy any blocks. Although entities will still get destroyed, like item frames or the player or everything else. So yes. Alright, so the 13th game rule defines whether you recover health when you lose health. So if I change myself to survival mode over here, you can actually see the command is right like that. So right now it's true, which is the default. So if I walk into this cactus, you will see I recover health almost instantly. But if I set this to false, then you will see I will not recover any health, and the only way I can recover health in this mode is using golden apples or potions. The 14th game rule defines how fast random ticks are performed, and it's called random tick speed, and this is the command right here. So if I, for instance, take a look at this wheat right here, you can see it's pretty well grown, and the default value of random tick speed is 3, as you can see there. But if I change this to any value, it could be anything from, as you can think of, I can change it to 1000. You can see it really speeds up the growing process. So the cactus has grown there already, and I can change this back, and you will see just how fast it grows. And you can change that to any value, and the higher the value, the faster it will go. Alright, so the 15th game rule defines, or it's called reduce debug info, and it displays less information in the F3 screen, or the debug screen. So how to open the F3 screen, you need to hold in function if you're on like a Mac or a laptop, but otherwise you can just press F3. This comes up right here, and at default it's set to false. So if you, that's the command, by the way, and if you press true, you will see that it will not show any coordinates or anything, and it will be basically reduced debug info. Alright, so the 16th game rule, which is called send command feedback, and it defines whether errors show up in the chat. So this is the command right here, and at default it's set to true. So this is the command. So if I type it in, you will see it's true. And if I type, for instance, like give maybe a diamond, it will give me a diamond, and it will say in the chat right here that it gave me a diamond. But if I change the game rule to false, I can do the same command, but I will not get the feedback. Alright, so the 17th game rule is show death messages, and it defines whether death messages show up in the chat. So if I, for instance, turn myself into survival mode and kill myself by dropping myself like this, you will see here that it defined why I was killed. But if I change this command to, for instance, so this is the command right here, and if I change this to false, then I can drop myself again, and I will not get the why I died. Alright, so the 18th game rule, we have spawn radius, and that defines how far from the spawn point the player spawns. So at default you can see it's 10, and this is the command. So for instance, if this was my spawn, which is it is not, but if it was, then 10 would define 10 blocks in each direction. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. If I set this to maybe 1 or 1, it will be only 1 block like this, and 0 would be right on the block every single time. Alright, so for the 19th and next to last game, we have Spectators generate chunks. And if you are in GM3 or Spectator, you will generate new chunks. So at default this is set to true, and if I go into game mode 3, for example, I can go out here and it will generate new chunks, as you can see there. But if I set this game rule to false, so Spectators generate chunks false, then I will not generate new chunks. So if I fly up here, and it will not generate any new chunks after this. Alright, so for the last game rule we have max entity cramming, and this is also a game rule which is new in 1.11. So we started off with a new game rule in 1.11, and we're going to end this lesson with a new game rule as well. So this defines how many entities can be on the same block. So here you can see the command, and if it actually as default it is set to 24. So if I spawn like a bunch of cows over here, we can demonstrate the effects here. So if I make a 1x1 fence over here, so if I spawn like a bunch of cows here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, there's a bunch of here. You see they start to take damage after a while. And that is because there's a new game rule in the game which defines that. So if I set this to like 0, that turns it off, basically. So I can place as many as I want. But this can be anything you want. So if it is 1, then only 1 cow will survive. And you can place 1 more and it will die instantly. Alright, so that concludes lesson 2 of Command Me Minecraft. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like, and be sure to subscribe for more lessons in the future. And anyway, my name is Technology, and I'm out. I'll see you later.